We are live. We are live on Substack for Porn Free Millennial. I believe this is, this is episode 54. And I know, whoa, crazy. And we're going to be ending the year here. This is December 29th, Monday. We're almost done with 2025. And I thought it'd be great to have another discussion with Jeanie Hosken here. Hey, Jeanie.
Hey, Mac. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks for being on. So Jeannie is actually a returning guest to the podcast, and someone that I like to call a friend as well. We've had a lot of conversations within Substack and without. Great person, and you've been great to get to know. I'd say like what's been like over like maybe a little bit over a year that we've known each other.
Yeah.
You had some some similar experiences in the RV as well as for me, so we're kind of like camper friends. We know that life.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits. And Jeannie is a counselor. She's the creator of the Restoration Center Encouragement Substack. And you also have a counseling service that you have with your husband Jeff, right? And that's for individual counseling, marriage counseling, right?
Yeah.
And I know that last time we talked, so I'm going to link to all this stuff once we're done with the conversation. But we talked on episode 44 of my podcast. I think we also talked as well on your Substack too, where I talked a little bit more about my story. And we really dove into emotional intimacy, the word intimacy a lot. We talked about how porn can affect that within relationships. And I think just as this year was coming to a close and I was thinking about, hey, what would be like a good episode to have, to end the year? I thought it'd be really good for the people watching, the people listening later, that we could talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. And I think with porn, at least in my life, I don't really know if I even knew what the term emotional intelligence meant, probably until I was like later on as an adult, probably like halfway through my marriage. And I think I just really wanted to get to that with you and talk about it, about like what is emotional intelligence? How is it affected by porn use? How does that affect intimacy, physical and emotional intimacy in relationships? And then if we have time, I think we're going to talk for about an hour or so. And you let me know like when you got to drop, because I'm a talker. I got the gift of gab. We hopefully can get to just steps in actually how to make it a meaningful apology. Because I think we talked about that a little over the phone. And I think that's something too that it took me a while, I would say until like a couple of years ago, really. Probably when I was going through my divorce to really truly understand what does an actual like apology look like versus just saying, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way, versus, hey, how do you actually have a sincere apology and then follow it up with action? So yeah, Jeannie, to get started. So, what does the term emotional intelligence mean to you?
Well, what I would say is emotional intelligence is having the ability to recognize what's happening inside of your own heart, your own emotions, be able to understand it, manage it, and then respond to your emotions about what's happening inside rather than react. So it's an awareness inside yourself, but also an ability to be aware of what is happening with other people and to be able to recognize what's going on inside of them and respond wisely rather than reacting or shutting down. And I would say most people oscillate between the extreme of reacting. I'm going to react to what you're doing. I'm going to try to control it, or I'm going to try to control you, or I'm just going to numb myself down and I'm going to just, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter. So it can be either or. Rather, to be intelligent is to understand, ooh, what is happening inside of me right now? What is that telling me? What is that message? Because emotions are messengers. They're just giving us information. What is that information? How am I going to respond to that? And how am I going to react to another person? Not react, but how am I going to respond to another person when they're having some sort of emotion. And that actually, to be able to be emotionally intelligent is really a requirement for a healthy relationship.
Mm.
It is being able to know what's happening inside of me and understand and help somebody else figure out what's happening inside of them. And so you're able to, through intimacy, through emotional intimacy, this is what we talked about last time. Into
Right.
me, you see, I'm going to show you what's happening inside of my heart. I'm not going to shut down. I'm not going to, you know, disengage from you. I mean, how many people do
Right.
that? I'm upset, so I'm just going to like disengage. I'm going to not talk to you. I'm going to
Or avoid.
avoid, I'm going to tell you I'm feeling something without telling you I'm feeling something. I'm going to just ignore you. No, I'm fine. That's the
Right.
opposite of being emotionally intelligent. You're saying you're fine and you're totally not fine. Okay. And you
Yeah.
might.
Those are typically words that I remember my past relationship, right? Where you hear I'm fine and you're like, are you though? Or if it's coming out of my mouth, like it's like an instant, like, am I really fine though? But somehow we're like programmed maybe if we don't have that development, almost as like a safety mechanism. Sorry for interrupting, but I just that came to my mind as you were talking about it.
It is a safety mechanism. And I would say sometimes it's an honest assessment that I actually don't know what's happening inside of me.
Hmm.
I couldn't tell you what's happening inside of my heart right now. All I know is I need to be away from you. I don't feel safe around you. There's something going on inside of me and I want to withdraw or I want to attack. And a lot of us
Mm.
are usually one or the other. We go,
Kind of like fight or flight, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm gonna run away from you or I'm gonna attack you. That's, when we get triggered or something like that. So, um, and there's not an awareness of what's happening. And the
Mm.
clients that I work with, Mac, this is what I would say, and I'll use an emotion wheel, the 8 core emotions to help somebody learn emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. I would say most people, when they're going through for the first time, they would struggle to be able to name sad, or they might struggle to name lonely. Lonely is a big one.
Mm.
A lot
Mm.
of people live in loneliness. It's like a chronic issue. It's so much there. It's the water they swim in. They wouldn't be able to name lonely because they're busy, right? Maybe
Right.
they're scrolling, maybe they're using porn, maybe they're doing whatever, and they wouldn't recognize, oh, I'm feeling lonely right now. But that's one of the core emotions that a lot of people that struggle with porn are acting out of, that loneliness. I don't feel seen, I don't feel known, I don't feel understood. And so going through that, for example, one guy I was working with recently, he was only really able to name anger and he was only able to name joy, when he felt joy.
Huh.
All the other emotions, all the other core emotions, guilt, shame, he had a hard time kind of figuring out, when do I feel those things? So it takes some time to be able to learn those. And ideally, Mac, we learn those things in our home of origin. Like
Sure.
that's a skill that we should learn growing up, right? But if we have parents that are not emotionally intelligent through no fault of their own, maybe that's how they grew up or whatever, we're not going to learn that from them. Okay. And a perfect example, this is such an innocent thing that happens, but this is where it can get confusing for a child. Let's say you fell down. You're 4 or 5 years old, you fell down and you're crying because you skinned your knee or something happened and you feel afraid and you really need some comfort. And mom comes in and says, "You're fine. Stop crying. You're
Mm.
fine. Look, brush it off. You're okay." Now, I'm confused because I don't feel fine. I'm actually in a lot of pain right now, and I
Right.
need comfort, and I need mom to hold me and say, "Wow, that was really scary." And that was really painful that you hurt your knee. Like, I need mom to name what is happening for me. But instead, what she says to me is, you're fine. Not because she's a bad person, but she doesn't want me to be in pain. So what she tries to do is she tries to take the pain away by telling me, you're not in pain. You're fine. And so so a lot of do you see how that happens? And you're like, "Oh, shoot, I thought I was in pain right now." And the pain doesn't go away. Here's the problem. That pain, that fear or whatever it was I was dealing with, it doesn't go away just because mom says you're fine. It's like, "Oh, I guess I'll just push that down." And now you have no language for naming what it's like to be afraid, or what it's like to
Mhm.
be alone, or what it's
Mhm.
like to feel sad, you know? And this is where we become very emotionally immature. And we don't know how to name what's happening inside of us.
I have a question for you. So, with that example, kind of made me think too is, oftentimes we're in that environment or something traumatic happens. It could be like little T trauma, right? I mean,
Oh,
when you're a
yeah.
little kid and you fall down and you scrape your knee, like that could be the most traumatic thing at that point in your point in life that's happened to you. But do you think sometimes when maybe that emotional intelligence isn't there, or that awareness isn't there, when you're saying you're fine, it's like coming from your point of view to where, hey, you're an adult, and you're talking to a kid. I didn't just skin my knee, they did, but it's almost like, you're not able to put yourself in their shoes
Yeah.
to be able to, and then if you're emotionally intelligent or developed or in that moment, you're following through with that, with them in mind, then it's like that response that you gave that was empathetic, that was emotionally intelligent would be there. So it seems like that's a part of it, right? As well as
Oh, yeah.
whatever environment you're in is, and we're talking about like childhood, but this could be tonight with your husband or your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever. It's almost like the emotional intelligence there, and we'll probably get to that, but it's like being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes and at least have a perspective to where you can kind of see where they're coming from and be able to empathize with that.
Absolutely. It's harder to do that, though, if you're not aware of what's happening inside of yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, if you're disconnected from yourself and you don't understand what is happening inside of you that's causing you to react or act the way you're acting, it will be hard for you to be able to do that for another person. And so, really, emotional intelligence starts with you being able to recognize what's happening inside of you
Mm,
and to be able to name that, to be able to say, "Ooh, I feel lonely right now. I feel some loneliness." And it doesn't mean you are alone. It could mean that I'm with you and you don't understand me, and I feel alone in that. I don't feel seen by you because you're telling me I don't get what the big deal is. You
mm,
know? Like, if I wanted to come to you, Mac, and say, "Hey, I'm feeling a lot of pain because my husband said this, that, and the other thing to me," and you said, "Girl, what's your problem? Like, get
yeah.
over it," you know? I wouldn't have felt seen by you. You don't have to understand my heart, but what you can do is make space for me to say, "Hey, wow, that sounds hard. That sounds like that
Right.
was tough." And that would be an emotionally intelligent response. You're able to connect with what was happening for me. You don't have to understand it, but you make space for that
Mhm.
and recognize that my feelings are what's happening for me at that time and come close to me. You become intimate with me in a way to be able to say, "Oh, wow, I see your heart and I'm here for you and I get that." Okay? Or I may not get that, but I can imagine that must be hard for you. Okay. So
Yeah, great point.
emotional intelligence starts with yourself and
Yeah,
understanding that.
totally. Yeah. No, that's a great introduction. I did want to say in the chat, for those all here, Clay first live event on Substack. So that's pretty neat.
Yay. Hi, Clay.
And then Bob just said good afternoon. So Bob must be in a different time zone than us mountain folk. Colorado and Utah. But hey, good afternoon, Bob. Good evening. Good morning, whoever's listening. Thanks for being on. So that was a great introduction to emotional intelligence there. Maybe to pivot a little bit into what we want to talk about next, like how because this is the Porn Free Millennial podcast. If you guys aren't don't know if you jumped into this live event, but I talk.
Yes.
Yeah, what am I doing here? But yeah, I talk a lot about my relationship with porn ever since I was the age of 10 and where I'm at now at the age of 34. But yeah, to focus in on that topic with emotional intelligence, I think you were talking about this, and we were talking about childhood too. I mean, a lot of people that struggle with porn, like myself included in there, typically it starts at a younger age. On average, it's like between 9 to 12 years old for young boys, and just a little bit later, I think, for young girls. Uh, but when I think about that, and I put myself back in that time frame, like I wrote a piece about a week or two ago about my first girlfriend down the street. And when I was writing that, it really made me think, and it did give me some ideas for what we wanted to talk about because I had to put myself back in the shoes of a young boy. When I started to like girls, I mean, I looked at porn before I actually, really started to take interest in girls, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I was like 10. But when I think about like emotional intelligence, I think mine was stunted because of my relationship with porn. Because, like you were talking about, I think in order to develop that emotional intelligence, there has to be some kind of conversation or some type of connection to where you feel like you're seen. And I think as like a young boy, and maybe some people on here can relate to this. It's like a really hard thing to talk about when you're that young. Like you feel really ashamed. Like I grew up Catholic, like I'm Christian. I think that was something like early on where I was like, oh gosh, like I'm going to hell. Like that's how I felt like when I was
Oh
in
my God.
second grade, and that's something I internalized for a while. But it's something it's probably one of the hardest topics I think like today, even as an adult, to just talk to somebody about. And I think that can stunt emotional intelligence, right? Because if we're not willing to talk about it with other people, like, are we even really willing to confront it in our own minds, in our own inner dialogue? Which I'll hand it over to you, but I think that's what you set it up for when you're talking about emotional intelligence is being able to understand the emotions inside of you first, right?
Right.
And I think porn stunts that because it's hard to really understand your emotions because you're drawn to this thing that in a lot of sense like you don't really want to be doing it or you want to quit it, but your emotions are just like I always just felt like mine were like just this it's just felt like there's like a storm brewing all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, porn will teach you emotional avoidance rather than emotional noticing. It's a
Mhm.
way, turning to porn is a way that you can numb down your emotions or avoid dealing with your emotions. And so a lot of people think it's just about the sex or it's just about, the images or whatever that is. But in reality, it's a way that for a lot of people that they can avoid the pain of what's happening inside of themselves, the pain of being in a home but not being known, being in a
Mhm.
home that for whatever reason parents are busy or they're not able to connect with their kids or whatever's going on there, but being in a place where I don't really feel seen or known or comforted. That's the other thing is, porn use can give you a false sense of comfort,
Mm.
connection. I'm connecting with something, it's not real, okay, but it feels like I'm connected to this thing, this image or whatever it is, and it causes us to not have to deal with the pain of loneliness or the anger or the guilt I might feel, and eventually the shame, because porn drives the shame and then the shame drives the porn. That hiding, I want to hide and avoid feeling how I'm feeling right now, and it creates that cycle of shame that's hard to get out of. One of the ways to be able to get out of that, it and it's not the be all, it's not going to naming the shame isn't going to fix the shame, but it's step 1. It's
Mm.
being able to recognize, like, ooh, I'm feeling a lot of guilt and I'm feeling a lot of shame right now. And just being able to say that and be able to identify what's happening inside of you is the first step to being able to tame that. There's a famous psychiatrist named Dan Siegel who says you can't tame what you don't name. So you
Mm.
have to know what's happening inside of me right now. What's bubbling up inside of me before I go for that thing, that distraction. It might be porn, it might be food, it might be shopping, it might be whatever it is, but whatever it is that I'm turning to instead of being able to name what's happening inside of me is important because we have to name it in order to be able to fix that or tame it. Okay, so that's really step one. So that's to get back to what your question was or your point was, is porn trains you to avoid your
Mm.
emotions, to reinforce this numbing type. I'm going to avoid anything that's happening inside of me. And I have found really in my own practice that a lot of the people that I work with that are dealing with porn have a really hard time naming what's happening inside of them. And once they can start to say, oh, wow, I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling sad,
Right.
or I'm feeling hurt, that's step one to the healing. Okay. Because again, if you're just trying to take away the porn and you're not dealing with the pain inside of you that's driving you to the porn, the fix is likely not going to be permanent, or
Right.
you will substitute something else because emotions have to be named. They're messengers. And we have to decide, what do I do about this message? Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Makes
Okay.
sense a lot. Something I'd add is whenever I do my daily check-ins with my little brother, which I've talked about a few times, we send each other voice memos, typically in the afternoon every day. And we follow like a check-in method, but the first thing that we do is that we actually name what we're feeling, which is makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And then I do a weekly group with some other guys. And yeah, it's always the first thing that you do when you check in is how are you feeling?
Hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense. So
Do you
um, I-
have an actual emotion, or do you just say fine? Like, are you able to say,
emotion.
oh, you do?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I can put it in the resources of the podcast, but there's actually like a feeling wheel
Yeah.
that we have, and I'm trying to remember who developed it, but it's got like it's got like the big emotions like you talked about, and then it kind of goes into the center where it dials into like more specific emotions.
Right.
But I think that's a great way because in a lot of ways, right, the healing and why we're talking about emotional intelligence, I think it's all pretty much intertwined, right? And when I've heard this before from other podcasts that I've listened to about porn, and at first I was like, "What? That doesn't make sense," but it actually does. But basically, porn free radio, Matt Dobshoots, I had him on episode 50. Great guy. He'd say like porn is the solution, right? Like it's not the actual solution, but it's the solution that some of us, like myself, that got locked in at a young age of like, hey, this is my solution to feeling this way or to these emotions that I have. Hey, here's my solution. And then it gets locked in at an early age. And then as you grow older, you know, when those emotions come up, then you haven't quite developed a good way to respond to like a good positive way to respond to those emotions, those messengers, right?
Yeah.
That's where that neural pathway is linked to, hey, well, here's a solution, go here, right? So okay, so step one is to name it, to understand the emotion or to name the emotion, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Step two.
Let me just add to
Yeah.
step one. Um, if if a person has low emotional awareness, okay, and I would say that's a lot of people who
Sure.
are dealing in addiction.
Yeah.
They're not really aware of what's happening, but they're going to a place of numbing, whatever. Part of the work is actually working out with that wheel every day, like you're
Mm.
doing with your brother. It's using that wheel every day. It's like going to the gym for your building up your emotional muscles. If you're going
Mm,
to work out physically and you're using weights, you're trying to build strength, not just for strength's sake, but ideally you're going to the gym so that when you want to carry groceries up 5 flights of stairs, you're like, oh, I can do this. Like, I got this because I've been practicing with weights at the gym. Okay. It's the same thing with working out with an emotional wheel. It's the practice of, oh, this is what sad feels like in my body. Oh, this is what lonely feels like in my body.
mm,
So that
right.
when you're feeling that draw to an old pattern of behavior, now you have been practicing so much with the wheel, you're like, okay, I get this. I'm feeling lonely right now. And that's why I'm being drawn to go to this place or do this thing or buy that thing. And so the working out of the wheel, which is one way to build your emotional awareness, has to happen day in and day out. You like gotta go to the gym. I gotta do this wheel. And then ideally you're practicing the wheel with the people, with safe people
Right.
in your life that can affirm. Like you've got your brother. So when you say, bro, I'm feeling hurt. And he's like, oh, I hear that. He's not trying to tell you, don't be hurt. Why you hurt?
Right.
That isn't a safe person. A safe person creates space for you to be able to say you're hurt and go, oh, okay, I'm curious about that. What's happening for you? Okay. And that's when you have that invitation to open up your heart and be intimate with that person. I'm going to share what's happening with me. I'm not going to shut down or I'm not going to, bypass what's happening with me. I'm going to be vulnerable and share. I'm not doing good. I feel sad. I feel lonely.
Yeah.
And you're
And
not going to talk me out of it.
when you're talking about it too, something that I've learned, right, like going to the gym is when you first start doing it, you might not even be doing the exercise correctly, right? Like when I first started doing it, it's like when you go to the gym, right? And you're like, am I doing this right? Or maybe you're lifting weight that, oh, like that other person's doing a ton of weight or whatever, and they look perfect, and I'm struggling with this. I think the same goes for that, right? With our emotions is when we start working out that muscle, it's like really gets really sore. It's painful. You don't really want to do it, right? Sometimes you don't want to go to the gym because you're like, oh, this is going to be hard. Uh, but yeah, it's a perfect analogy, I think, when you talk about it, because, and it's not even an analogy. I mean, it's just fact, I think.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense because typically when I'm checking in with my brother, how I'm feeling, there's been times like where I might say something, I'm like, okay, like, do I really feel that way? Or, am I trying to protect myself? And
Mhm.
doing it day in, day out, and you get to know somebody like that you trust, like my little brother, or we call them like accountability partners, right? In recovery, or someone that's just really close to you that you can confide in. I think over time you get to know each other really well. And it's almost like you get to kind of tell like, hey, if he's checking in something with me, that is a reoccurring thing, and maybe he or me, maybe we're kind of in the yellow. We do like green, yellow, red with how we're doing with our sobriety. Like yellow is where you're, hey, caution, you're edging a bit, you're edging closer to a relapse. Typically that a lot of the times it's linked to how you're feeling and how you're addressing those feelings, right? I know typically with me, like I used to have a hard time like when like with my divorce, like when that anniversary came around of our marriage, I remember having a relapse when it would have been our sixth wedding anniversary. And it hit me I felt really hurt and sad about that. But I didn't really prepare for that as well as I could have to be ready for that moment when it happened to be like, hey, like hold on to something. Like you're going to be going through a lot of emotions right now. And I think it's important, like, hey, even if you're feeling these emotions, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to this thing or that you have to act out in this way. And it's like a cycle you got to break out of, right? And maybe I'm jumping ahead a bit, but that just made me think about it a little bit. Is it really is like working out that muscle? So that's a really good
Yeah.
way to say it.
Yeah. It's working out the muscle for yourself so that you get good at naming, oh, this is what it feels like to be in pain, in with the pain of loneliness, or this is what it feels like to be sad or hurt or afraid. to be afraid. And to be able to name those things is huge. The other part of that, Mac, is as we're practicing that for ourselves, we need to practice being safe people for other people to express their emotions to us.
Right.
So, if let's say in when you were married, right, and your wife at the time said to you, "Man, I'm feeling so much pain that you did this thing," or "I feel hurt that you did this thing." You've got to actually train your brain to be able to respond to her in a safe way, which is, "Wow, I hear that. I hear that." Okay, because that's connecting. That enables her to be seen and heard rather than going into a defensive place. "What? Girl, why are you feeling that way? Like, I didn't mean that. I
I'm
mean,
sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry you felt that way
I'm
about that.
sorry you
Yeah.
felt that way. Like, I didn't mean that. You took it wrong." And so you became a person who resisted what was happening for her. And that's very disconnecting in a relationship. Okay. That doesn't build emotional intimacy. So we have to get good at recognizing what's happening inside of us, naming it, but we also have to be able to be safe people to be able to, when somebody is expressing what's happening for them, that we can be safe for them and say, "Oh, wow, I hear that. What else is going on for you? Tell me about that." Okay. And she may be saying she's mad at something we did, but we have
Right.
to train our brains not to go on the defensive because we want to protect ourselves. That's human nature. We want to protect and we want to defend. And our brains are trained that way. So we've got to untrain that to be able to hear somebody else's pain. Okay. Pain maybe we cause directly, intentionally, or unintentionally. They're not trying to feel pain. They're just saying, "I'm feeling pain right now."
Right.
And you go, "Ooh, wow. Okay. That's a lot. Tell me about that." That takes practice. I'm telling you, it is not
Yeah.
easy. It really isn't easy. And you think it's gonna be easy until you have to do it, and then you realize how many of us, how many people, how many times in our lives that we wanna defend ourselves and tell other people that they're wrong and they shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, as you're talking through that, like I remember my marriage of 5 years, and I was so bad at that for such a long time. I mean, I really didn't develop that muscle really until I started to go to therapy myself, and
Right.
like I went to two Christian therapists, and it's almost like I didn't really quite fully understand how to have that conversation with her until I started to have that conversation with like a therapist, someone trusted about like my own emotions, like my own
Mhm.
pain. Um, because yeah, and it's especially hard, I think, especially when you're struggling with porn and somebody has like a very valid uh, concern or a very valid thing that they're hurt by, and you're stuck in that mindset still, like where you're still hiding it or you haven't told them about it yet. Like
Yep.
there is like that inner turmoil as well. So it's like you don't have the space almost to really just think about them. I think in a lot of ways, like when I was really like my porn addiction or whatever you call that relationship where it was just not being addressed. I look back on that time and there was like a lot of selfishness. Like I was always thinking about like me and hey, how am I going to hide this or how am I going to, A, B, Z, all that stuff, right?
Yep.
And it didn't leave a lot of room for me to like have that space for her. And especially when it had to do with my relationship with porn. That's why she was upset. Oh my gosh. When you talk about defensiveness, I mean, I think back like when it first like was a big deal and I was so bad. Like I will say that now. Like I was terrible. Like I feel like I gaslit. I was so defensive. It's
Yeah.
almost like I put all of it back on her. Like, why would you even think I'd do that? Or why did you even think I'd lie? Instead of just, like now we'll talk through it more, but just owning it and just and owning like my emotions, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a really good point, because I think it does happen a lot. The last relationship I was in, and I think I told you about that, it was very healing. It was a porn free relationship. I look back on that one, and when we did have conversations, I had the space open already, because I think I was doing the work. I've been doing the work myself, to where, hey, if we need to talk about something, we're able to name what the emotion is and then talk about it. And
Right.
it's not like there's a accusation or like I'm a bad person, anything like that. It's just like, hey, let's talk through it.
Yeah.
You're hurt by something that I did. Okay, well let's go through it and let's repair that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's more healthy than the other
Oh,
way.
a
So,
thousand percent. 1,000%. Because when you don't have the skills or the ability to name what's happening for you, you only have one resort, which is to be defensive and to turn on the other person, right? Because you don't want to own what's going on inside of you. And that breaks emotional connection. It breaks emotional attunement with your partner or whoever you're in relationship with. It erodes trust and safety because I don't feel like it can speak to you because of
mm,
the defensiveness, and it creates confusion, and obviously emotional distance. And that's really what you're wanting in a relationship. So, a basic thing somebody that they can do is just to own even the fear and the guilt and shame of being able to acknowledge what's happening. If your wife at the time or your girlfriend or whoever it is comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm having so much fear that this might be going on."
mm-hmm,
And just recognizing, like, "Woo, I'm getting flooded in fear right now. I'm just so afraid, like I'm going to be exposed. Like all of that stuff." And just to go, "Whoa, I have so much fear. I have
mm-hmm,
so much shame. I'm feeling a lot of guilt. I'm feeling a lot of shame right now. And I'm feeling a lot of fear to even be able to talk to you right now." That's the
mm,
first step in intimacy, believe it or
mm.
not, because
Hey, welcome.
I'm just telling you what's happening
Yep.
inside of me. I'm
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just being naked in front of you. I'm
Mm,
literally showing you my heart. I am frozen in fear right now in front of you. And I don't even have the words. And you won't have the words because being frozen in fear is like fight, flight, flee.
yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to run away. That's my past way of doing this, like hide, shame, fight with you, defend myself. And it's just going, I'm flooded with fear. I don't want to run and I don't want to fight. I just don't know what to do. I'm just frozen in fear. And just being able to say that, that's the first step to own what's happening inside of you, you know. And I do that a lot of times when I need to have a conversation that's really hard and I don't know what to say. Like with my husband, for example, I might just say, "I'm feeling so much fear right now." And he'll
Mm,
say, he's been trained and I've been trained.
yeah.
He'll say to me, "What's happening with the fear?"
Okay.
Okay. He won't say, "Girl, don't feel fear. I'm your husband." He'll just like,
Right.
"Ooh, okay. What's happening with your fear?" And it's like, "I need to talk to you about something that's really hard for me." And
Mm,
he'll slow down and come alongside of me to help me deal with the fear so that I actually can have that conversation. Right. And that's where what I was saying is I need to practice owning what's bubbling up in me. And he needs to practice being a safe place to be able to, like, "Ooh, she's dealing with something. I'm not going to try to talk her out of it. I'm not going to say, why are you feeling fear? I'm your husband. I'm not going to do anything wrong.
yeah.
I'm not trying to feel fear. It's just there."
Mm,
Okay. And by processing it helps to get up and out so that now my thinking brain, this is the prefrontal cortex that can come up online and I can start to have a conversation rather than being like, I'm frozen. I'm frozen.
yeah. It makes me think like visually, right? Like if it's bubbling up, it needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And if there is a space for it that's safe, it's almost like that containment zone. Like, hey, this is where we put the material. It can bubble there instead of bubbling inside of you. Because it makes me think of like those really emotional conversations. Those are the conversations I think, right? Like where you have something to say, and then he's not even giving you the space.
Right.
So then it's like we don't even get to like really talking about like what it is. gosh, I've been in a lot of those conversations, a lot more in the past, thank God. But I remember them very viscerally, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like we don't even get past step one. Like
Right.
you've identified your emotions, but I'm like not giving you, I'm not even opening the space up to like hear it. And I think for men, it's a tough thing. Like I just remember, like, I just felt like so ill equipped for it,
Yes.
you know, like being young in marriage and like all that and past relationships too, like completely incompetent, it felt like with emotions as a guy. And I think a lot of it was important because it's like, that's like what your relationship is like with women. Like you're trained to really, hey, I'm going to get what I want. I'm not really going to have to hear about any of your emotions, how your day was, you know, what you're afraid of. Like I'm just getting like the full package, uh, without having to worry about having to deal with the emotions. And I think when that happens at a young age for a boy, it can really, I think, affect how you actually interact with women in
Oh,
real
yeah.
life. Like I was very dismissive. Um, it's not like I was a terrible person, but I don't think I respected women as much as I thought I did, and I think that came across a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it was a lot because of my relationship with porn. Okay, so we're talking through like naming it right, naming the emotion,
Yeah.
and then so step two, next step if we wanted to go into that.
Well, what I would say is because emotions are um, they're messengers. You know, they're
Right.
giving us a message about what's happening inside of us. The next step is what is this emotion trying to tell me? You know,
Mm,
for example, if I feel fear, the message of fear is caution. I need to be careful. I need to slow down. There's nothing wrong with fear. Fear is a valid emotion. Sometimes, if you're in Christian circles or believer circles, they'll say, "Oh, you shouldn't feel afraid." You know, we're told, you shouldn't have fear because of Christ or God or whatever. And that actually isn't really helpful because God gave us all of these emotions for a reason. We don't want to
right.
live in a place of fear, so that's why we kind of want to pay attention to what is that emotion telling me. Like I might feel fear to ask my husband for something that I need. Like I need him to come alongside of me. I need him to be with me. And there's a fear of that he might reject me.
Mm,
Right. And that's a valid fear, but it 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 it's a real fear for me, but it may not be based on truth. It may be
sure.
based on, the past relationships where my mom and dad weren't there for me or whatever. And so I need to slow down and listen to that fear and maybe even name it to my husband. I'm like, "Ooh, I'm having a lot of fear that if I ask you to come off of what you're doing, that you're not going to be there for me."
Mm,
And again, he has to be trained to say, "Oh, I hear that. Tell me more about that or what's going on with you," rather than like, "Girl, I'm your husband. Like, what the heck? Why would you think that of me?" Because
yeah.
he's making it about
Defensive.
him. It's
Defensive.
defensive, right?
Mm.
And I don't feel known then. And then I have to hide. I can't be my true self. And here's the insidiousness of porn. And this is what you were saying, Mac, was that porn can make you selfish and self-focused and you don't have to worry about the person. You can just get what you need from porn, but that's the reality is you're really not getting what you need. What you really need is to be known and to be
Mm,
seen and to be loved as you are, to be accepted as you are. And so you're running to something that can never meet those needs. You can never be truly known when you're hiding in porn. You can never be truly validated for who you are when you're pretending that you're something that you're not. The most
mm,
freeing thing is to be able to say, "This is how I'm feeling," like to your brother or your accountability partner, whoever, and they're there for you and they're not judging you. They're just going, "Wow, that's hard. I get that." And you're like, "Really? You're not running away screaming in horror?"
yeah. Big
Like,
time.
you're just gonna be there with me, and that itself brings healing. That brings connection, and that's what we're all looking for, is to be known and to be seen and to be heard.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Builds a lot of trust. It really does.
it does. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so just to kind of, you had asked me what was step two. I would say is when I go through the emotion wheel, either with by myself or with my husband, I will name that emotion like, wow, I'm feeling so much fear about this, maybe at this podcast. I didn't feel fear about the podcast, by the way, but let's say I was. I used to get
Yeah.
overwhelmed with fear,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Especially going live. You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
and 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 I would try to like overwork, like
Mm.
do perfectionistic work, like over prepare, to take care of that fear instead of naming the fear and go, what is this fear telling me? Why am I afraid? And if I
Mhm.
start to name those things, it's like, I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid that people won't like me. I'm afraid that I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to afraid. And that's when I have to take all of these things. This is how I do it, okay? Because I have a faith and a belief in God. And I believe He's the one that knows the truth about me. I'll say,
Mm.
God, are any of these things I'm believing about myself true?
Mm. Mm. Right.
Is this true? It feels real. It feels like if I make a mistake, my career is over. Or it feels like if I get this wrong, I'm going to be, shamed or whatever. And so I have to actually work through, what is this fear telling me? Is it helpful? And if it's not, what is it based on? And often it's based on past hurts, pain, things I
Yeah.
learned in childhood, um, you know, and I have to deal with that. And that's what you would take to your therapist, or you'd work with it in your journal or with God. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm believing so many things that aren't true about me.
Yeah. Mistaken beliefs.
Right.
Mistaken beliefs. Yeah. Those are typically behind a lot of the, I would say, yeah, the poor decisions that we make when, at least for me, like I know with my relationship with porn, a lot of it was driven by mistaken beliefs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's almost like you're getting the messenger, but then you're not really, maybe you don't have the equipped intelligence to really understand what the message is. So you might look at the message and be like, oh, yeah, like I'm worthless because I feel this way. Like I have this emotion, therefore, like I'm worthless, or I don't have worth, or I'm not loved, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when you turn that corner and you're able to start naming that emotion with accuracy. And that was a big thing that I know, like my Christian therapist really talked to me about. Like he called me out on it. He's like, "That's a mistaken belief that you're saying there. Like that's a lie that you're
Yeah.
believing about yourself. Like that's not true." And even when people tell that to you, you still almost don't believe them. Like you're just saying that to be nice. But I think when you have somebody that you have that intimacy, that trust with, you can really take that feedback from them and be like, yeah, like you're right. Like you're telling me the truth. Like I trust you. And you wouldn't just be telling this to me as a lie to make me feel better. Like you're actually telling me this because it's
Right.
true.
Right.
And a lot of that I heard, I think through a lot of hard times in my life, like through my divorce and other points, a lot of the stuff I heard was from people of faith, like my Bible study leader. My gosh, I mean, I remember I was like crying to him, just saying like, thinking like, hey, like I think I'm gonna go through a divorce. It's getting really emotional, and he's like, God loves you, like
Yeah.
He loves you, and like you're a good man, and all this stuff, like all these things that really hit me hard because I had that intimacy, that trust with him. And,
Yeah.
what he was telling me is grounded in the truth, is to
Yeah.
seek after him and to repent, and to follow Christ. And I know not everyone on here is like Christian. So,
Yeah.
but I think ultimately, right, it's being able to identify those messengers. And then, like you're saying, being able to kind of understand like what they're trying to tell you,
Yes.
like what the
And
message is.
yes. And then you have something, there's a belief, it's a message, there's a belief there. And that's when you have to say, is this actually true? And if you do
Yeah.
have a relationship with God, you can actually go, and I believe God is truth. I mean, that's a principle that Jesus is the truth. And so I'll go to him and say, Jesus, is this how you see me? Is this true about me? And I usually hear as I'm journaling, and I'm just I don't want to believe things that aren't true about me, because I those false beliefs have led me down so many
Right.
destructive pathways. And so here's something. We were talking about childhood and things like this and where those lies happen. In my own home, I never saw either parent model to me repair. When they
Mm,
did something that wasn't right, whether it was beat me or, you know, violence committed against me or said horrible things to me out of their own anger and their own pain and own brokenness, I never heard, hey, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. That was not your fault.
right,
So
right.
the message that I learned as a child is I'm responsible. That if something goes wrong, it's my fault. If you lose your temper, it's because I wasn't a good enough girl, that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and I caused you to do that. So for a long time, my false belief was I was responsible to make everybody else okay. And that's also a
Mm,
way I stayed safe, because I didn't never know when like my dad was going to like explode. And so I tried to always be on guard and be a good child and do the right thing and overperform, and it was a safety way for me. And I felt like if I couldn't show up as myself, because it was my job to make sure my parent didn't get upset. And
mm,
of course it didn't work, because they still got upset and they still would lose their temper, and still, like, I tried everything to do the right thing and you still beat me. I don't get it, but I guess I just learned to take responsibility for something that didn't belong to me. So
mm.
now when I feel fear, okay, this is a really good example. I'm married 40 years this year. And
Congratulations.
thank you. But there's a lot of times when I can see that my husband's getting upset, and my mind still now goes to, what did I do wrong?
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
did I leave something out? Did I? And listen, he's the most easygoing guy. Like, he's not like my parents, but that learned response in me to feel fear. So now I can say, "Ooh, hun, I'm feeling so much fear right now." And he'll say, "Okay, what's happening with the fear?" Rather than, "What do you mean fear? Like, what's up? Like, why are you feeling fear? Like, that's stupid." It's because it's a learned response in me. But if I can name it and he can help me process it, I can see, okay, wait a minute. This is
Right.
based on a false belief that it's my job to make sure my husband doesn't get upset. Okay. That's what I've been doing that for 65 years, 64 years, making sure other people don't get upset. That was a learned false belief. And because now I can pay attention, ooh, I'm getting flooded with fear in my body. I can name the fear rather
Mm,
than, here's the key piece, react to it, which would be scurry around, try to, what do I need to do? Huh? How do I need to make sure my husband's not in a bad mood? His bad mood is his bad mood. I can't, like, he's got to own that. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And it's like and I think we talk like in recovery a lot about like triggers,
Mhm.
when something triggers that response, or it triggers the emotion, and then there's a response that's after the emotion that you're talking about.
Right.
And I think that's the thing, like, if people are listening when we're talking about like porn, like what you just talked about, I think is so important, is that space in between. You feel the emotion, and then you can make the choice like you did to talk about it, to name it, to take a step back and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way."
Yep.
And to think about it. And that gives you, I think, enough time and space. We've used that word a lot, to where you can choose differently than what you typically, how you typically would respond throughout like your life. Like for me, right? Start at 10, been in recovery now for 7 years. Like I still get those temptations, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, like this still happens to me. Like I still get temptations. Like I still get urges to go back when I'm feeling a certain emotion.
Yeah.
I think typically for me, it's like when I'm feeling like I'm like not living into my full potential, or if I'm feeling like I don't have value. I think that's like where I get a lot of the temptation. But it's having like the ability to take a step back, and at least like what I do with my accountability partner, like what you did with your husband, is you're able to talk about it. Or like with my recovery group every week, it's like you're able to open up and name it, and then address it, right? And I think for me, like when I do this daily with my brother, it's also to like you talk about how you're going to address it, like what you're going to do. Like we talk about that in our check-ins. Is we talk about our feelings. We talk about our activities in recovery, like what we're doing in recovery, and that's spiritual health, physical health, relationships, and passions.
Right.
Then we talk about A or fast. So we talk FA, and then S is sobriety. So green, yellow, red. Where are we there? But then there's two T's. One T is threats. Another T is tools. So that's where you talk about, okay, well, what's threatening my sobriety like right now? And typically that's tied back to how, like, what emotions I'm going through
Yeah.
right now. And then tools is how am I going to address those threats? Like, what's my game plan for the rest of the day?
Right.
And I'm sure, like, as you're having that conversation with your husband, that's also part of it, right? Is you're able to talk through, okay, well, how are we going to address this emotion that you're feeling right now?
Yeah. Here's the thing, for me, from my history, where there was a, physical and I would say really emotional abuse in my home, I lived in a high state of fear the whole time, but I wasn't aware of it because I was constantly managing the fear by staying busy and working, and it worked to my advantage because I did a lot of studying. I was a good student. I had a lot of accomplishments, but I was fueling all of that anxiety and that fear into that. In my own recovery from people pleasing, perfectionism, overwork, all of the things that were not helpful to me, I had to start to recognize, like, oh my gosh, I am feeling fear right now because I was so used to reacting out of the fear and trying to, like, kind of hit it in front. I had to start to learn, what does fear feel like in my body? And I, believe it or not, didn't know I was living in constant anxiety for a really long time because
Yeah, I
I
can weigh on you.
worked out of it. So here's an example, and talking about my husband and recognizing when fear is bubbling up in me. A couple years ago, when we were still living in the Airstream, we were getting ready to go to our next location. And Jeff was going in and out of the trailer, and because he's a big guy, the trailer was moving a little bit. We'd already taken up the stabilizers and it's shaking a little bit. And I felt this urge to stick my head out of the bedroom I was packing and go, "What is your problem?"
Mm,
Like, my body was starting to feel very afraid. And this is what, as I didn't say that to him because I started to realize I want to fight with him right now. I want to pick a fight. I want to tell him, like, what is your problem? Why are you rushing me? Why are you? He hadn't said anything to me. Okay. And I felt the Holy Spirit say to me, you would feel that shaking when your dad was about to haul off and hit you. He would build up
mm,
steam in our home, and I could see him pacing. He was pissed about this and pissed about that. And I could feel that sense of something's going to happen, something's going to happen. And that trailer moving started to make me feel like something is going to happen to me and I'm not safe. And so my body was wanting to defend and go, what is your problem? And it was that because I recognized the fear and I recognized something was building in me, I was able to go, oh, wow,
mm.
I'm being triggered by a decades old response. And I was able to stick my head out and go, babe, I'm feeling so much fear right now. And he's like, oh, wow, okay, what's happening with fear? He was able to attune to me rather than going, what's your problem? I'm just moving stuff around the trailer, you know?
Right. Right.
So that's an advanced level of paying attention. Had I not learned to feel what fear feels in my like in my body. And for him, it was loneliness. He lived in chronic loneliness, my husband, and until he was able to go, oh, this is what lonely feels like in my body. You know, this is what it feels like to not feel seen or connected or known. So it's kind of the water you swim in. But that's where
Mm,
we're going right back to the beginning. That's where emotional intelligence helps us because we become very aware of what's happening inside of us rather than responding to that fear, responding to that loneliness. Like, I don't know what else to do. So I'm going to keep going back to that porn
right.
and keep going back to that thing.
Yeah, great point. And speaking of that, I think Bob had a question. He said, "How do you find a Christian therapist?" Well, Jeannie, you're a Christian counselor,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How much experience do you have? And you got your, was it your master's in theology, or is it your?
Yeah, I got 2 masters. So I went to seminary and I have a master's degree in divinity, but I have a master's degree in counseling. And it's kind of my journey is a little funny because it's interesting actually. I started out in physical health. So I'm a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, and I was really into helping people feel healthy in their bodies. And then what I recognized after a couple 5, 6 years of doing that, I was like, "Oh my God, but you can go to the gym all you want, but if you have soul stuff going on in your soul and you have wounds and you don't know what's going on with your trauma and all of that other stuff." So that's when I went and did a master's degree in counseling. It's like I need help because, telling people to eat healthy or teaching people how to do that and they're not understanding why am I eating or why am I overeating or why am I restricting, why am I anorexic, all of that. And then it was later that I realized, wow, there's so much stuff going on spiritually as well with people, and because we're triune beings, right? We have a body, we have a soul, and we have a spirit. And to try to seek healing in just this one thing, if it's just
Yeah,
in therapy and you're just talking about I mean, talking is good and being heard and known is good, but we also need to know what is happening physically and what's happening spiritually as well. And so they all interact. They all interact. And so when someone comes to me, for example, I will look at it all. I had a lady show up a couple weeks ago and she's like, I'm having obsessive thoughts about wanting to die. She didn't want to kill
mm,
herself, but she didn't want to be
yeah,
living either.
sure,
And she had a lot of trauma. She'd been in therapy for years and years and years and years. And I wound up saying to her, I said, like, how are you sleeping? And are you getting any exercise? Like, what's going on with that? And so it was just such an obvious thing. And she's like, I don't know when I've had a more than 4 hours sleep ever.
right,
I used to exercise. I don't get any physical exercise because she works full time and all that. So you can't neglect the body either. It's like a whole thing. You could therapy, but if you're not dealing with your spiritual stuff and you're not dealing with your body stuff, it's going to get out of whack. So anyway, for me, I like to look at all of that when someone comes to me.
yeah. So Bob, you have Jeannie, you have her husband as well, their business, and then I'd say, like, when I found a Christian therapist, I think I just remember just going online and I was just like looking up like Christian therapists near me. Uh, I have a few names too, Bob. Like, if we want to talk offline too, if you
Yeah.
need some help with that. But
Yeah.
I think there's typically ways that you can look up therapists and then sort them by, like, if they're faith based, things like that. But I found like that was a lot of help with me, because then it's like you're talking about, Jeannie. At least, like, if you're a Christian, or whatever faith you're in, if you can find a therapist, counselor that's in that realm too, I think it can be really helpful, because you can talk a little bit deeper about things. Because I agree with you too, Jeannie. I think a lot of it's connected. I think that's like why when we do our check-ins, we talk about our spiritual health, our physical health, our relational health, our like connections with people, and then our passions. I find when those four things are rolling on all cylinders, An important thing to do too is we were talking about emotions. Also good to notice when you're having positive emotions, right? Or when you're doing really well. Because I think we were talking, which makes sense. We were talking more about like maybe negative emotions. And I think those ones sometimes are harder to feel or initially, right? At least in my experience, it's harder to name them. But I don't know. I think when you are able to name your negative emotions more accurately, it gives you a better sense of knowing when you're doing really well and almost like savoring it more or respecting it more to where when you are having a good day or you are feeling positive emotions. Because I think like when my emotional intelligence was a little bit stunted and, it's almost like the highs would be really high and the lows would be really low. And then I think as I develop my maturity, uh, it's more steady, I think. Uh, and there's still lows that happen, right? But you're able to process them and have a perspective on them to where you can actually see something maybe that's a negative or an emotion that comes in that's sad or lonely, but you're almost able to identify, like we've been talking about, like identify where it's coming from
Yeah. Yeah.
and then address it.
100%. I would say this too, Mac. A lot of people want to name emotions as positive or negative, and my perspective is emotions are just neutral. They're just
Good point.
information, you know?
I
And
agree.
so it's not like we're trying to eliminate sad, we're trying to eliminate fear because
That's
it's a
what porn. That's what
natural.
porn does. It's like a numbing.
Yeah, it's a numbing. No, I mean, you're going to go through stuff that it's going to cause you to feel sad. And there's going to be things that you're going to want to process. And it's not like we're trying to get rid of that. We're just trying to be able to name it and know it's a message. And what is this message telling me? And what do I want to do with it? But you made it. Here's the point I want to go back to, which you made excellent, which is we're not very good, I think, at processing joy.
Mm,
And one of the things that I work with on my clients is getting them to name joy, little joys all throughout the day. Because if the only joy you have is that dopamine hit you get from the porn and you're not recognizing where joy is showing up in the rest of your life, you're constantly looking for that level.
yeah.
Okay. Where what we want to be able to do is, and I've had this with people with eating disorders, right? It's like, oh, it's that cake. Like that just gives me so much joy. I'm like, okay, but are you able to name joy about the time you spent with your child or the sunset or whatever? And not just like kind of it's in the background, but just to say, I feel so much joy and looking at the
Mm,
sunset. Because what that does is the naming of the joy helps you to process it and it helps to become a more real experience for you. It connects with gratitude as well. So for example, one of the practices that I have when I do my quiet time in the morning is I have one of those digital frames and the pictures come up and I'm able to say, oh my gosh, I have so much joy remembering that time we went there, or oh my
mm.
gosh, when my son was there, or when we went to Hawaii, and it I name that joy and it increases gratitude. And so as you were saying, Mac, it helps you to even out a little bit more so that you're not just relying on a huge spike in dopamine that you get from the porn hit or the sugar hit or the shopping hit, whatever it is that you're trying to get that little high, you're really actually cultivating joy in a greater way throughout the day. And that's how the wheel works as well. Because you're not just naming
Mm.
the anger and the all the other things, you're naming the joy and saying it over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I think too that it's almost the act of being present. That was something I wrote about. I think it was last week. This newsletter. I was thinking about presence
Yep.
because I was thinking about Christmas and presents, little play on words. But I think like living without porn in my life, it's allowed me to be more present,
Yes.
which allows me to then be able to process my emotions. Because when you think about it, like the wording of it's really funny because like our brains, right? It's like it's like a computer inside of our skull. So when we say process our emotions, it is like literally is like our brains like, processing like what's coming in, and then our body's like responding to whatever it is, right? Like when you're talking about the fear, it's like we can feel it in our body. Or when I'm thinking about times where I feel like I don't have any value or I'm not loved, like I can it's like typically I can feel like in my chest,
It's an
you
ache,
know,
right?
or like sometimes when I'm procrastinating, my jaw will tighten and I'll feel like that tightness in my jaw. And it's really interesting because I never really thought about it. And then I started to work with my therapist and he told me all these things. And I'm like, weird. Because he's like, yeah, sometimes it could be like the color of the wall, or it could be something like a smell. It could be something that could trigger it, but you're not really going to be able to really figure that out. You're kind of flying blind until you start to intentionally work on that muscle, right, of your emotions. And yeah, I think a great way, right, is definitely for me. It helped being with a Christian therapist and really seeking that out. It was so new for me when I initially did it. I remember we did like a trauma timeline, which I'm like, what is that? And we like started from like when I was a little kid, till now, and just talked about things. And I think it's definitely can be a scary thing. Like if people are listening to that, and it's up to you on what you want to do. I can talk about my experience. Jeannie can talk about your experiences with your clients, but I think how do you exercise your emotions if you don't even know there's a gym, or you don't know where the gym is, you don't
Yeah.
know what the exercises are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's where we're trying to get to people on this discussion, right? Is the importance of the idea of exercising your emotions
Yeah.
and your emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
and how beneficial that can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the vast majority of people aren't good at this. Okay. And it's a problem area for most people. And dare I say for men in particular,
Yeah.
because um, you know, somehow it's thought that men shouldn't have emotions or they shouldn't feel things. Or and I know my husband being a fighter pilot for, he retired from the military, he flew jets, and there was this sense of there's no place in the cockpit for emotions. And part of that
Mm.
is true, like you need to be
Yeah.
able to focus and need to do whatever, but then there's been this carryover that emotions don't matter, and what matters is logic and intelligence and thinking rather than feeling. And there's and for men in particular, I think there's been a value on being able to be logical and do whatever instead of acknowledging what's happening inside of your heart. But the reality is you were given emotions, you were made by in the image of God. And if you're wanting to know what does God look like, if you're a follower of Christ, we believe he was the very image of God. He was God and he modeled what God is like. And Jesus displayed all of the emotions.
Right.
He had emotions. He didn't try to spiritually bypass himself. When Lazarus died and he was going to go and raise him from the dead, he didn't say, I'm not going to cry because I'm going to go raise this guy up. He actually stepped into his humanity and cried
Mm.
with his Lazarus's sisters. Says
Mm.
Jesus wept. Okay, the shortest script, the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. He cried. He expressed his humanity by expressing his grief. Okay, even though he knew, oh, it's going to be okay in the end. And I think guys can do that sometimes. Oh, it's fine. I don't need to do whatever. They bypass their own. So to get good at it, sometimes it's helpful to work with a therapist. Sometimes it's helpful to sign up for a program where I'm a coach. Both my husband and I are coaches. It's called Connection Codes, and it actually teaches you how to connect with yourself, your own emotions. We use the emotions wheel. It's a practice that you can learn and then you can apply in your relationships. If you're
I'm going
married,
to put your link in the chat too, by the way.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
as we're
If you're
talking.
married, you 1000% need this because this is the language of connection. You connect through the heart. You don't connect through logistics. You connect through the heart. Okay. So you need this if you're married. If you're a parent, You need this because this is how you teach your children emotional intelligence. Okay. For example, I have grandkids. My grandson, this is over in the summer, he fell underwater under my care. Okay.
Boy.
We were in the baby pool, and I was lifting my other grandson up to put him in the stroller, and my 2-year-old fell under the water. And so I
Jeez.
like pulled him up. He's terrified. Okay, as you would expect. Now, here's the temptation. It's to say, "You're fine. You're fine, Finley. You're okay. You're okay." But he is absolutely terrified about what happened to him. So instead, because I'm teaching him to name his emotions and to give language for what was happening inside of him, I said, "You're really scared right now. That
Mm,
was really scary. And Gigi's here with you. You're scared, and I'm here with you." And then we started talking about what happened. Once he stopped
mm,
crying, I said, "Now, what happened? You fell under the water and you got really scared. You couldn't breathe. That was so scary. And you couldn't see Gigi. And then what happened? Gigi picked you up and she held you close." So now I'm building a language for his trauma because that was traumatic. That was
right.
traumatic. And what the mistake parents make is we wanna just shove it under the carpet and say, "You're fine. Get up, move on." And that's how actually trauma gets stuck in our bodies. The trauma stays there, and now he's deathly afraid of water, could have been deathly afraid of water for the rest of his life because he didn't actually have language for what happened and that he didn't process that the story actually ended okay. I came up, Gigi held me, I was scared. But I was okay in the end. He needed
Mm,
that language for himself. Well, if you're an adult and you've never done that work, you've never been able to process what happened for you. Let's say you, like you, Matt, you were exposed to porn at 10. The exposure to pornography at 10 was traumatic for you because your brain was not ready for that. There
yeah.
was nobody there to help you process that. You couldn't understand it, automatically you're being drawn to it, but it's weird. I don't like that, but I'm scared of it, but I'm being drawn to it. And no one is there to help you make sense of it. Okay. That was trauma for you. Okay. And a lot of people will assume I did something wrong, even if you looked
Mm,
for it. Maybe you were in the playground and someone said, Google sex. And you're like, okay, well, I did it, but I didn't know what I was going to see. Okay, but people then take that upon themselves. We need somebody to help us process that. And so, your question of what do you do if you're emotionally dumb? You need to go to school. Go to school and start to learn this stuff. Listen to this
right.
podcast over and over. Get that emotions wheel, sign up for connection codes, whatever it is, but start to learn the language of the heart. You're going to need it in relationships. You're going to need it in your recovery. If you're addicted to porn, you need this. You can't stop porn without dealing what's driving you to the porn.
Amen. Amen. Preach that.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That's amazing. No, that's really that's a great. It's great information, wisdom. I know that we're over an hour,
yeah.
so I don't know where you're
I
at
was
with
having
time.
fun, Mac. So,
Hey,
yeah.
we can keep having fun if you want, but but if we need to hop to, we can.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's really important because I think like you hit on it earlier in the podcast, and I come across it all the time because I write about it and talk about it. But I think typically a lot of people, including myself when I was younger, think about porn as something that's just like a sexual thing. And especially for guys, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is guys being guys, this is how we get out our energy, we're sexual beings, all this stuff. And it's almost like the propaganda that you believe, probably from the porn industry and from culture. And it
Yeah.
it 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 distances you from such an important thing of no, actually, there's some hurt that I'm trying to heal. And I thought this was the way to heal it when I was young because I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it because I was so ashamed and
Yeah.
felt like, I mean, you're a 10-year-old kid. I mean, gosh, like I have nephews. Like I have a niece. I mean, they're like right around that age. Like we were just at Christmas Eve, my mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family. Like there's kids, but my mom's side, it's like there's like a ton of grandkids everywhere. Kids, grandkids, all running around, and a lot of them, are getting bigger. Around that age of like 9 and 10. And I'm just like looking at them, like you're so young, you're a kid. You know,
No.
and that's the age. That's like the average age. When kids get exposed to porn, and it breaks my heart. It makes me to name my emotions. It makes me sad. It also makes me angry. I have a deep rage. Not towards the industry and towards like our culture. I think about that. I think that's why I'm so fired up when I talk about it, because I think it deeply impacts, like we've been talking about, emotional growth, like emotional intelligence, emotional intimacy, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot about too, and like that was like what I wrote about in The Girl Down the Street. One of my articles I wrote about was um, not just thinking about the young boy, but thinking about like the young girl, right? That's getting into to her first relationship with a boy. This is how she's going to learn about, boys, men at a young age. And she's going to probably stumble upon their porn addiction, or at least feel the output of that, the immaturity, which I wrote about, of just how immature I was, and just my emotions were all over the place. And I get quick to jealousy and anger and all these things. And I look back on it as I think it's because my emotions were underdeveloped. I wasn't mature. And of course, when you're young, like your emotions are going to be underdeveloped anyways. I mean, it's part of, I guess, being young, but it's not an excuse for, for not like, working on it, or as a parent, thinking about it when we're with kids, or as we're growing up, whatever age we're at right now, for whoever's watching or listening. There's never a time where we shouldn't be going to the gym with our emotions and working on them, right? Because there's always things that we can work on. And it's not just how we internally handle our emotions, but it's also how we give, how we receive.
Yeah.
I feel like I can receive emotions a lot better now because I've worked on it, and I can also give it out more, to where uh, it's a much smoother conversation, or relationship, because you're more in tune with your emotions, or with the frequency. You're on the same frequency, and maybe you're able to tell if someone's off the frequency, and can say, "Hey, Jeannie, you okay? What's going on?" That kind of thing.
What's happening with you? What's happening with you? That's a really great line. What's going on? What's happening with you? We touched on this in the last podcast, and I
Yeah.
want to say it again. We were designed to have three core soul needs met. Okay, we have a need for comfort, we have a need for connection, and we have a need for intimacy. And intimacy is not sex, it's into me, you see. We have a need to be known and to be seen and to be valued.
Mm.
Okay. When those three core needs are not met, a lot of people will turn to some alternative, because it's a need that God puts in us. We have this desire to be known. We have this desire to be loved, to be connected, and to receive comfort. When those aren't met, we look for that somewhere else. And a lot of people, that's how they get in the porn cycle. It's a false way of intimacy. Okay. It's, that I'm knowing that porn person, or I'm knowing whatever, but she's not knowing me, and I'm not really showing my heart to anybody. It's just a physical abomination, really, for what true intimacy is. Comfort, okay, porn is going to comfort me. I'm feeling something, and that dopamine hit will provide that false sense of comfort and connection. Okay, I'm connecting with something, but it's not true connection, because this
And
this
disconnection, really.
it's disconnection. And so we're turning to something that can't meet those needs, and we get in this cycle of feeling more and more lonely, more and more disconnected, more and more unknown and unseen. And then the shame causes us to hide more and hide
Hmm.
ourselves. And it's a trap that you just can't get out of. The antidote for that is intimacy, comfort, and connection, real intimacy. So sharing your emotions. When I say to you, Mac, I have some fear and I have some guilt and I have some shame about what I did, I'm
Mm.
now showing you what's inside of me. And that's the antidote for hiding.
Yep.
Okay? That's the antidote to retreating in shame, to retreating in guilt. Okay. So getting good at this is actually almost like a vaccination against running to porn, being able to share what's happening inside of my heart and to be able to share myself and ask for comfort. This is where, Holy Spirit is called the comforter, being able to
Mm.
turn to somebody. If you don't have a person in your life, say, Holy Spirit, I'm so lonely right now. I need your comfort. I need you to be with me right now. That's Jesus's name is Emmanuel, God with us. So God, show me, I need comfort right now, either by
Mm.
you or send somebody that I can be comforted and connected to. So being in groups, accountability, all of that, that's, Mac, what you're doing by having an accountability partner is you're connecting with another person. You're not hiding, you're showing up as truly Mac and being able to say, dude, I'm like not in a good place, to your
Right.
brother, and be
Yeah.
real and be
I've had those talks
authentic.
before. Yeah, I've had those talks before for sure.
Yeah. So and that is the antidote to the pornography. And sometimes guys will say, "Oh, it's because my wife's not having sex with me." That the sex thing is very
Yeah.
confusing. It's just
Yeah.
not that. It's not that. You know what I'm saying? There's core needs of intimacy that need to be met. And a good sex life, by the way, has at its foundation emotional intimacy. Okay? Because emotional intimacy builds safety. And if you want to have a
Totally.
good sex life, you need to feel safe. You need to be able to say what's happening for you. You need to share your heart before you share your body. If you're sharing your body and you haven't shared your heart, that isn't true good physical connection. Okay, that's a cheap, you know, um, like fix is what it is. It's not how God made sex.
I think someone said this to me once, but he was kind of just saying like, yeah, basically like sex outside of marriage or that without that intimacy is basically like you're just masturbating with another person. It's a little bit blunt to say. So
Yeah.
if you have it on speaker, I'm sorry, but with your someone in the other room, but that really hit me when you said that because I was like, yeah, that's because you're not totally connected with that. So it's almost like you're fulfilling your needs, they're fulfilling their needs, that kind of.
Right.
And again, we're saying that with quotations
Right.
is you're seeking in a place where you're not going to be fully satisfied
Right. Right.
and because there's something missing and then
Yeah.
we all do really we're almost like kind of predisposed, maybe it's original sin or whatnot, but we're almost like predisposed sometimes to get to go down maybe the human route or the route of the flesh than the route of truth in the word.
Yep.
uh that's what I found in my life. When I pursue the word and the truth, I do feel connected, I feel intimacy, I feel comfort. When you're talking about that, I just thought about, I think it was when I moved back into my parents' house, when I initially was kind of going through my divorce stuff. And I'll never forget, I went to church. I'm in Colorado, I go to Flatirons Church. And I just remember sitting there with my dad and listening to the pastor and his message. And it just hit me so hard. Like he was talking directly to me. And it just sounded like Christ was talking to the Holy Spirit, just saying, "Hey, like you're in the right place right now, and you're loved, and you're forgiven, and uh you're my child. And I'll never forget that, because in the moment where I felt every right in my head or justification to disconnect and to seek other means to get comfort or to get intimacy, I found the deepest sense of that when I was in church.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know and I have, that's where I go. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
and I think it's important. It's important to realize that in our lives, is that ultimately for me, that's where it is. Those three things is when I'm following Christ, I'm having that conversation, I'm listening and being humble about it. uh Not saying it's easy, right? Not saying it's easy.
No, I hear you, but it's a really good place to start because it's in that place that there's there's a Psalm 139 which speaks to how well God knows us, that he knows when we get up, he knows when we lay down. It says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And that's how he designed us, and he loves us so much despite what we've done. He loves us. He's not, a lot of people think he's a bad guy in the sky wanting to judge you, and he loves you. That's why he came in the person of his son to die so that we could be reconciled with him and we're offered forgiveness. That's the cool bit. Is just no matter what you've done and where you've messed up and how you've hurt
Right.
yourself and you've hurt other people. And I know, Matt, you've carried a lot of pain for hurting your wife and ending in divorce and all of that. Like, you've had to deal with that, but knowing that there's a place to put all of that,
The
that you can
space.
actually, you can give that to to Jesus and he takes that off of you. And that's beautiful. Like, that's what grace is. You didn't deserve it, but like it's a free gift. And,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's like, man, the worst thing I ever did, that he will forgive me. And once you get that and you know that you don't have to live in that place of shame and guilt, that when I mess up, like, anyone that's struggling with a recovery and they was like, "Oh, I fell, what happened to you just a while back, Mac?" And it was like,
Right.
"Oh, I just had that little relapse," but you know where to run. I know that I can run to him. I can be washed off. I can be forgiven. I can whatever. And it's not like you have to do penance or you have to like earn your way back. No, no, no. It's as simple as saying, "I'm sorry," and receiving his forgiveness. And then it's like, I'm good to go. I can keep pursuing this. That's the free gift and that's the beauty of it. And that's what makes this walk bearable because it's not easy. Even with him at times, it's not easy because you deal with your humanity and it's like, yeah, but this is the 17th time I've done it. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but his forgiveness is unlimited. It's like crazy. You just can't get your head around it. It's like, wow, that's like pretty good news. It's like, yeah, it's real good news.
And I think that that's helped me process my emotions, right? Because
Yeah.
I think some of us can get into such a deep place of shame to where
Yeah.
uh you just, I mean, I had the time in my life one time, like, where I think I was like 2 years sober or something, and I relapsed, and I felt like so ashamed and
Yes.
just like, oh no, how did I just do this? And I just, and the bad tendencies came back. And I just remember just saying to myself, hey, like, it's gonna be between me and God. No one else has to know. But like, was I really like repentant about it? Uh not only was the right way to go about it, and that ended up causing a lot of damage, which I think chipped away at the marriage for sure.
Yeah.
But some of us can get in such a deep place to where, I mean, I had times in my life where I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna not even think about it. I'm just gonna go look at it, and I'm not even gonna think about it. Like, I'm just going to just do it.
Yeah.
I felt like that way in college a lot, and but what it did was it pushed me away from God, because
Oh yeah.
I knew deep down in my heart that I was knowingly sinning against God, but I just didn't want to face it. I didn't want to own it. I didn't want to name what that emotion was that was driving me to it.
Yeah.
So what that did was that created so much distance to where ultimately where that was that reckoning, the discovery early in my marriage, with my habit. That's why it was so devastating because I never really built up that emotional intelligence to first name it. And then the whole time too, I was pushing away my religion, my faith, because I didn't want to face what I was doing. And because I thought, well, maybe life will be more bearable if I just don't even think about it having a consequence or having a meaning. But the whole time it did have a consequence and it did have a meaning, and I couldn't escape that,
No, you can't. Yeah.
and there was a reckoning, and I think that's why, I hope this message is meeting somebody at the right time.
Yeah. 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 Here's the thing,
Uh, it's definitely something that can be addressed. It's something that we can all address in our lives, whether it's porn or whatever the habit is or whatever that pain is. It's not out of anybody's reach to do that and to and I think too, like that's why I wanted to talk to you at the end of the year because we're ending the year, right? We're going into a new year. And I think, the new year is always like all these resolutions and,
yeah.
things. And I just thought it'd be a good talk, just to have where we could talk about, hey, well, maybe before we think of all these ways that we're going to better ourselves and all these goals, why don't we first like just have a conversation about like, well, what are our emotions? I mean, like, what are our emotions that are driving us those thoughts of like, well, I want to improve on this, or I want to kick that addiction. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are, hey, I want to have a porn-free year for 2026.
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to get there if we don't address first like what emotions are driving us that way? Um, and that could go for so many things in our life, right? I mean, for me, like I gained some weight, so been going to the gym more. But I think that's something for me in 2026 is okay. Well, what emotions are driving the behavior of like eating late or maybe eating more than I need to or skipping the gym if I feel so inclined. Like, what's behind that? What are the emotions there that are
Yeah.
causing me? Maybe I don't feel confident if going to the gym. Like I feel like I need to look a certain way or something like that.
Yeah.
Like what is it? And so hopefully this talk today was valuable to people listening. I think we're gonna have to do a part two
Yeah. Let's do
about
it.
let's do a part two. Okay, so we'll do another talk together because I want to really spend a whole episode, I think, talking about how to give a proper apology and like what goes into that. Because I think that's also something. And I think Jeannie, what I'm coming to find talking with you is like I'm thinking about all these things. I'm like, wow, like I really didn't really think about that when I was younger, and now I'm thinking about it. And then you do such a good job of explaining it. But I think as a man, like it took me so long to really understand what a proper apology, like what it is,
Right.
and like how to actually like give a proper apology without coming off like condescending or defensive, or maybe there's not the follow through there because I think there's actual. I mean, people probably have different steps, but there's definitely like a process that you should follow and practice, like we talk about with practicing emotions. So that'll be our next discussion
Yeah.
together.
And the homework for that is actually working on your own emotional awareness, your own emotional intelligence, understanding what's happening inside of you so that you become better aware of what's happening inside of other people. Because a good apology recognizing the harm of what has happened for that other person. And if you're disconnected from yourself and you're disconnected from what's happening with other people, it's very hard to acknowledge that what you have done causes pain. Okay.
Mm.
And so becoming aware, self aware of what's happening inside of you, your emotions. And also, I would say for you, Mac, you've tied that to like weight gain and things like that. A lot of us walk through life disconnected. We don't know when we're hungry. We don't know when we're full. We don't understand when we're, completely burnout or tired or what we need. So being able to slow down and become self-aware. I mean, that's what I did for I don't know, 30 plus years, work with people with eating disorders who were very disconnected from what was happening inside of them. And they were either overusing food or underusing food to cope with emotional
Mm,
issues. And so there becomes this defining moment where you need what needs to happen is I've got to understand me. That maybe that's your goal for 2026. Not like I'm just going to give up porn. Well, okay, I mean that's great, but there all these things have to happen before there. So what do I have to add in to be able to ultimately take that out of my life? And that maybe become I need to be connected more to myself. What can I add in to my day? Whether it's quiet time or going through that wheel to learn about what's happening inside of me. Learning if you are a believer in Jesus and you're not practicing repentance, repentance means running to him when you mess up. Okay, repent people think, oh, repent. Repentance is actually a gift. When you make
mm,
a mistake, it's like, I gotta run to Jesus because I need to get washed clean. I want him to love on me. I want him to hold me. If you're not sure about this, read about the prodigal son in Luke, I think it's
yeah,
15.
great story.
You know,
Great
when
story.
that
Yeah.
guy, he probably had a bunch of addictions. He took his money and he ran and he was spending on money and women and like all the things, partying. And he gets to the end of himself and he turns around and he goes back home to his father. And that's the act of repentance. He's going
Yeah.
back to daddy. And what does daddy do? He's not standing there going,
Yeah, he meets him.
son, uh-uh. He runs to his kid. He's running to his kid and he holds him and he says, man, I love you. Here's the ring, son. You belong to me. So dad welcomes him home. So repentance, every time you mess up, you want to run to him because he's the one that restores you. He's the one that says, son, this isn't who you are. You're better
Mm,
than that. I love
yeah.
you. You're not meant for the pig pen. You're meant to live in my house with me. You're my son, or you're my daughter, whatever. So that's the cool part. It's like, maybe that's what you do. It's like, I'm going to run to the Father. That's what I'm doing this year. I'm running to him. I'm going to get washed clean because I'm sick of all this muck. I'm
Yeah.
going to be restored.
I mean, that's top of my goals, like, is just constantly. Like, that's top of my list for 2026 is as much like as humanly possible that I can do is to run towards Jesus. Like, that's my main
Yeah.
goal. Because I
Yeah.
think I think ultimately, right, at the end of the day, I think sobriety is a byproduct of what we're doing in daily with our physical health, our spiritual health, relationships, our passions. I think, like I was saying earlier, when we're pursuing those things, and at least for Christians, for me, like when I'm pursuing Christ, the sobriety is like it's not like I'm focusing on quitting porn or avoiding porn. Like I'm just focusing on that on my North Star.
Yeah.
And then the sobriety is just a byproduct of that.
No kidding. Yeah.
Because it's like, hey,
Absolutely.
if I'm pursuing my North Star, or we talk about like your purpose, like what's your why, like why are you doing this? When it becomes holistic in your life and it becomes this North Star for you, that's, I think, when sobriety becomes more attainable, is because it's a byproduct of just who you're becoming, like who
Yeah.
the person that you're becoming, the identity that you're forging. It's just the identity. James Clear talks about it a lot in Atomic Habits, right? Which is a great book. I think it's a great like book, like if you're struggling with an addiction or something, because he talks a lot about like your identity. It's becoming the person that doesn't look at porn, becoming the person that doesn't smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol. Like you have to become that person, and it's your choices are like the votes for who you want to become. So it's your daily choices. It's that he has so many like one liners. I'm like, wow, put that on the back of the RV bumper sticker, right?
No kidding.
So,
T-shirt, bumper sticker. I love all that.
but yeah, we'll wrap it up. Jeanie, it was so good having you on, and what an honor to have you on before the end of the year too.
Thank you for having me. I always love chatting with you. It's such an encouragement. And I just want to honor you for who you are, Mac, for your ability to share your journey, your courage, your vulnerability, your authenticity. It's like you're not trying to say, I got it all together. It's like I'm on a journey just like you all are. But
Yeah.
people they need someone that's going to encourage them along the way. And I just honor you for that. And I love what you're doing. 1,000% love it. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Jeannie. And I would say to you, you just have such a love for like the Lord, and
Yeah.
just when you speak, it like fires me up. I get excited whenever you talk about Christ and your faith, and
I
uh,
just love
you
them.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
do. Yeah.
it gives me a lot of motivation, energy. Whenever we talk or whenever I'm just thinking about the conversations that we've had. So I wanted to honor you as well because I think in talking about this as well, like from a woman's perspective, talking about your relationships, you've been really vulnerable, when we've talked to on our podcasts, and I just want to honor that. So, uh, yeah, thank you so much. I
You're
want to honor
welcome.
everyone that's hopped on as well, that's listening to right now. Really
Thanks,
appreciate you all.
everybody. Yeah.
Make sure that you subscribe to Jeannie. So if you're watching this after the fact or like not live, I'll go ahead and put Jeannie's Substack page in the description, as well as her website for individual counseling, marriage counseling. I think connection coaching as well that you were saying. I'll put all of that in there. And then, yeah, also I provide coaching as well. If you're
Yeah.
wanting to directly focus on your relationship with porn, do that as well. And then, I think just to end, Jeannie, would you like to just end as like in a prayer to
Oh, I
to
love
end the
that.
year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
love that.
So we'll end on
So
a prayer.
yeah. So for anyone that's listening to this, I just really invite you to just take a minute to tune into yourself. Okay. Because we want to be able to know what's happening inside of ourselves. And so let's do that by taking a really big breath in and exhale. And as I'm praying, I want you to just focus on your breath because you are being sustained by a higher being that cares about you and breathes life into you. And so, God, I just thank you so much for every person on this podcast. I thank you for Mac. I thank you, Lord, that um, you created us for connection. You created us to be comforted. You created us, God, to be in intimate relationships with you and with each other. And I just pray, God, that you would meet each person where they are right now. Lord, that they would feel a stirring inside of them, that they would know that you are part of their healing journey. I pray, God, that you would help each person on this podcast know their next steps, whether or not they're dealing with addiction, but whether it's, I want to get to know a greater level of emotional intelligence in my own life. I want to experience that. Or I want to be more connected with what's happening in my own body and be connected to my body in a different way. I just pray, God, that you would meet each person where they are. And Lord, that they would be encouraged, that they wouldn't feel shame or guilt or hopeless, that they would look up and know, Lord, that there's help on the way. And I pray that in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful prayer. Beautiful prayer.
Thanks, Mac. So let's do it again. Happy New
Yeah.
Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
Much love, and hey, we'll see you. We'll see you
See
next
you
year.
next time. Yeah. See you next year.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Much love.